There is something you carry that others notice the instant you step into a room. You don't need to say a word. You don't need to force attention. It's as if the air shifts, as if people instinctively lean toward you, or just as often, recoil without even knowing why. Some call it presence, some call it intuition. But Carl Jung's hidden writings suggest it is something far more rare, an aura that only a certain kind of person carries. And according to his private notes, this invisible field is both your greatest strength and your greatest danger. Think back to moments in your life when you could feel the atmosphere of a room change before a single sentence was spoken. Maybe you felt joy humming beneath the surface of a gathering, or you sensed tension crackling like static electricity, even when everyone was smiling. Most people dismiss these feelings as coincidence or imagination, but empaths know better, and Jung knew better too. He believed this wasn't fantasy at all. It was evidence of a hidden energy, one powerful enough to shape destinies. Here's the paradox. This rare aura makes you magnetic, but it also leaves you vulnerable. It draws people who crave healing, but it also attracts those who unconsciously seek to drain you. If you've ever wondered why complete strangers spill their deepest secrets to you, or why certain people cling to you as if you're their lifeline, this is why. And if you've also wondered why you end up feeling exhausted, used, or even targeted, the answer lies in what Jung discovered nearly a century ago. He called it the wounded healer frequency, not a phrase you'll find in textbooks, not something most therapists will ever mention. This was the private language Jung used to describe what happens when pain transforms into power. Empaths don't radiate light because life was gentle with them. They radiate light because life carved them open, forced them to feel what others numb. And in that crucible, something extraordinary was born. An energy that heals simply by existing, but also an energy that, left unconscious, can consume its carrier. Why is this so dangerous? Because when you walk through the world with this kind of aura, you become a beacon. You don't choose who notices you. The light you give off attracts both moths and predators. Some will see your glow and be inspired to rise. Others will sense it and try to feed on it. And if you haven't yet learned what your aura truly is, you'll spend your life trapped in cycles of giving, rescuing, and being drained, without ever realizing the mechanics at play. Jung warned the empathic aura, misunderstood, can destroy the very person it was meant to empower. This is why we're going to explore what Jung discovered but never published in his major works. He knew the world wasn't ready to hear it. He knew that describing aura as energy fields or psychological antennas would be dismissed in scientific circles. Yet, in his private reflections, he wrote extensively about how empaths radiate something that functions across multiple dimensions of psyche and energy. He saw it again and again in his patients. Those who carried trauma often developed extraordinary sensitivity, and some went beyond sensitivity into a full-blown aura that could not be ignored. Imagine carrying around an invisible mirror that reflects back to people the parts of themselves they've spent their lives trying to avoid. That's what this aura does. People feel it, even if they can't name it. Some respond with gratitude. Some respond with hostility. And some respond by attaching themselves to you like vines wrapping around a tree, hoping to siphon off what they lack. And you, the empath, are left wondering why your life feels like a battlefield between radiance and exhaustion. But here's the good news. Jung didn't just diagnose the problem. He offered a map, a way for empaths to stop being unconscious sponges and to start living as sovereign alchemists, a way to take the wounded healer frequency and refine it into what he called the sovereign frequency. In this state, you don't lose your sensitivity. You elevate it. You don't dim your aura to protect yourself. You learn how to shine it in a way that empowers you and everyone around you. So the real question isn't whether you have this aura, If you're still listening, if you felt the truth of these words in your body, chances are you already know you do. The real question is, what will you do with it? Will you let it drain you until you collapse under the weight of carrying everyone's shadow? Or will you learn to wield it with conscious mastery, becoming not just a wounded healer, but a sovereign healer? Someone whose presence transforms without being consumed. What follows is not just theory. It's the path Jung left scattered in notes, observations, and private reflections. A path most psychologists still ignore, but one that explains why your aura feels like both a curse and a gift, and why. Once you understand it, you'll realize it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to awaken you. Stay with me, because in the next section we'll dive into the heart of this mystery, the hidden frequency that turns pain into power, and why Jung believed it could change not just individuals, but the course of human evolution itself. Carl Jung believed there is a pattern woven into the lives of true empaths, a hidden vibration that makes them unlike anyone else. He called it the wounded healer frequency. At first glance, the phrase sounds poetic, almost mystical. But for Jung, it was a precise description of a psychological reality that the very wounds you endured became the forge that shaped your aura. You don't radiate empathy because life was gentle with you. You radiate it because you have walked through pain so deep it cracked you open, and instead of collapsing, you learned how to transmute it. Think about it. Most people go through hardship and close themselves off. They build walls, armor, defenses. But empaths? Something different happened. Instead of becoming numb, your nervous system adapted in the opposite direction. It became more open, more attuned, more sensitive. You didn't just survive difficulty, you metabolized it into perception. This is why people feel something around you that they can't explain. It isn't just kindness. It isn't just warmth. It's an energetic signature forged through psychological alchemy. Here's what makes this frequency rare. It isn't inherited. It isn't a genetic gift you were simply born with. It's created through lived experience. Jung compared it to the ancient process of turning base metals into gold, the alchemical tradition that fascinated him for decades. The empath's aura is a kind of alchemy, not of substances, but of soul. You take raw suffering, grief, abandonment, betrayal, and instead of letting it calcify into bitterness, you transform it into resonance. Others feel that resonance without you needing to say a word. And yet, the wounded healer frequency carries a paradox. On one hand, it is magnetic. It makes people lean in, drawn to you, as if by instinct, they sense that you will understand what no one else can. They sense you can hold their pain without judgment. But on the other hand, it is perilous. This same aura acts like a signal flare in the unconscious world. It calls out not just to seekers of healing, but also to those who are starving for energy, attention, and validation. Your light draws them too, and where the healer sees resonance, the predator sees opportunity. Jung understood that this frequency operates on multiple levels at once. Psychologically, it comes from your unconscious sensitivity to emotion. Neurologically, it arises from the heightened activation of systems in the brain linked to empathy and perception. But energetically, it radiates outward, forming what he called a field effect. You can think of it as a subtle but powerful vibration that extends beyond your body, picking up signals and transmitting them back out. This is why you can walk into a room and feel the truth beneath the surface, and why people often feel exposed in your presence. Your aura doesn't just listen, it mirrors. The danger, Jung warned, is when empaths don't recognize this frequency for what it is. Without awareness, they mistake their openness for weakness, or worse, they allow others to exploit it. This is when the wounded healer collapses into what many call the emotional sponge. Instead of transmuting energy, the empath absorbs it until they're weighed down by emotions that aren't even theirs. Have you ever felt inexplicably heavy after being around certain people? Have you noticed how your mood can shift dramatically without a clear reason? That's the wounded healer frequency operating unconsciously, turning you into a container rather than an alchemist. But Jung's insight wasn't meant to scare. It was meant to awaken. He wanted empaths to see that this frequency isn't a curse. It's a stage, a transitional phase in the development of consciousness. The wounded healer is not the final identity. It's the chrysalis. The point is not to remain there, endlessly drained, endlessly rescuing. The point is to use awareness to refine the aura until it evolves into what Jung described as the sovereign healer frequency. That is when the empath no longer leaks energy but radiates it consciously, no longer pulled between extremes but grounded in wholeness. Why does this matter? Because understanding the hidden frequency is the first step in breaking the cycle that so many empaths live in. The cycle of being pulled between people who desperately need them and people who unconsciously harm them. Without clarity, empaths repeat the same relational patterns, attracting wounded souls, trying to fix them, then feeling exhausted and disillusioned. But with awareness, everything shifts. The frequency stops being a signal for predators and starts being a beacon for true allies. And here's the most powerful truth Jung revealed. The wounded healer frequency is proof of resilience. It is living evidence that pain can be transformed into power. You carry within you the story of survival, but also the capacity to turn survival into service, not through sacrifice, but through resonance. Others sense this in you. That's why strangers confide in you. That's why people are drawn to your presence even when they can't explain why. They are feeling the frequency of transformation itself, the vibration of someone who has turned wounds into wisdom. This is why your aura is not random. It isn't just niceness or sensitivity. It's the rare frequency of someone who has walked through darkness and come out with light. It is forged, not given. And this is exactly why Jung believed it was both the greatest danger and the greatest gift a person could carry. In the next section, we'll explore where this frequency comes from, the hidden origins of empathy itself. Because Jung discovered that this power doesn't just appear, it is born in childhood, in the crucible of survival, in the earliest moments when your nervous system learned that the only way to endure was to feel everything. And understanding this origin is the key to unlocking your aura's true power. Every empath's story begins in the same hidden place, childhood, not in classrooms or playgrounds, but in the invisible emotional weather of the home. Carl Jung believed that the seeds of empathy are rarely planted in calm soil. They grow in storms. They sprout in families where words didn't always match reality, where safety wasn't guaranteed, and where survival meant learning to feel everything long before you understood what those feelings meant. Imagine being a child in a household where tension simmered under the surface. Maybe no one ever said anything directly, but you could sense it anyway. The clenched jaw, the sharp inhale, the silence that weighed more than shouting. Most children ignore subtle cues. Empaths don't. Empaths learn to treat those cues as lifelines. A glance, a sigh, the way a door closes. These details became your early warning system. Jung called this hypervigilance, the nervous system rewiring itself to read micro-expressions before it could even read words. Why does this matter? Because that rewiring never goes away. It becomes your default operating system. Where others see a smile, you feel the sadness behind it. Where others hear anger, you sense the fear driving it. This is not magic, it's adaptation. As a child, your survival depended on it. You had to know when the storm was coming. You had to know how to navigate emotional landmines. And so your body, your brain, your very aura adapted to become what Jung described as a living antenna. Modern neuroscience confirms what Jung intuited decades ago. Studies on highly sensitive persons show that empaths' brains process sensory input more deeply. Mirror neurons, those cells that allow us to mirror the emotions of others, are more active. The limbic system, which governs emotional response, is heightened. Your nervous system, in essence, was sculpted by experience into a highly tuned radar system. It doesn't just notice emotions, it absorbs them, decodes them, and often carries them as if they were your own. But here's the paradox. Jung warned about what once protected you in childhood can become a burden in adulthood. As a child, hypersensitivity helped you predict danger. As an adult, it can mean you carry everyone's pain without realizing it. You walk into a workplace and immediately feel the unspoken stress of your coworkers. You sit down with a friend and leave carrying their sadness in your chest. Your body still believes that feeling everything is the only way to stay safe, and unless you become conscious of this pattern, it will keep running your life. Jung noted something even more profound. This adaptation doesn't just stay in the mind, it radiates outward. He observed that empaths often developed what he called feeling-toned complexes, psychological constellations of energy that act like magnets, attracting similar emotional patterns in others. In simpler terms, the very way your nervous system was shaped begins to create an aura that others unconsciously perceive. You're not just reading the room is reading you. Think of a time you've met someone who instantly felt safe. You didn't know why, but you trusted them. That's the empathic aura at work. Now think of a time you met someone who made you uneasy, even though they were smiling. That too is the empathic aura. Your childhood survival mechanisms evolved into an energetic field that others sense instinctively. This is why people either gravitate to you or bristle against you. They are responding not just to your words, but to the energetic imprint of your lived experience. The danger, as Jung highlighted, is when empaths remain unaware of this origin. Without awareness, they believe their sensitivity is simply who they are, instead of understanding it as an adaptation. And when you don't understand an adaptation, it controls you. You mistake your hyper-awareness for obligation. You think you must heal everyone you sense. You feel guilty for saying no. You feel responsible for emotions that were never yours. In truth, your nervous system was built to protect you, not to sacrifice you. But awareness changes everything. When you realize your empathy was forged in the fire of survival, you gain the power to choose. You are no longer the child scanning for danger. You are the adult who can direct this extraordinary gift consciously. Jung believed this shift from unconscious adaptation to conscious awareness was the essence of individuation, the process of becoming your true self. And for empaths, it begins with honoring the origin of your aura without being ruled by it. There is another layer to this origin story. Jung observed that empaths didn't just learn to read emotions, they learned to transmute them. As children, you may have soothed angry parents, distracted tense siblings, or absorbed conflict to keep the peace. You became the emotional regulator of your environment. This role shaped your nervous system into something Jung described as participation mystique, the unconscious merging with the states of others. You didn't just witness emotion, you carried it, you processed it. You became the filter through which chaos was calmed. And that is why, as adults, empaths often find themselves in the same role: healers, listeners, rescuers, whether they choose it or not. It isn't coincidence. It's the imprint of childhood survival, still radiating through your aura. Until you recognize it, You'll keep repeating the same story, absorbing, soothing, carrying. But once you see it clearly, you can transform it. You can stop being an unconscious sponge and start being a conscious alchemist. So the truth is this: your empathy is not weakness. It's not even natural. It's the result of extraordinary adaptation. Your nervous system didn't break. It evolved. It became capable of perceiving at frequencies most people will never access. Jung saw this as both burden and potential. Burden, if left unconscious; potential, if made sovereign. And the first step to sovereignty is understanding that your sensitivity was never random. It was your superpower in disguise. In the next section, we'll uncover how this adaptation manifests as something more than psychological. Jung discovered that the empath's nervous system creates an actual energetic aura, a field that others can feel, a radar that scans and transmutes the emotions in any space. And it is this aura, more than anything, that defines why empaths are both magnetic and vulnerable at the same time. Carl Jung believed that empathy isn't just a trait, it radiates. What begins as a psychological adaptation in childhood eventually becomes something others can feel without explanation. He called it an aura, an energetic field that extends beyond the physical body, operating like invisible radar. And this is where the mystery deepens. Because while most people experience emotions internally, empaths broadcast and absorb them externally. Their nervous system becomes a kind of transmitter and receiver, tuning into signals others can't perceive and sending out waves others can't ignore. Think of the last time you entered a crowded room and felt instantly overwhelmed, even before speaking to anyone. Or the times you sat near a stranger and sensed they were carrying sadness or anger long before they opened their mouth. That isn't imagination. That is your aura scanning the environment. Jung observed this again and again in his work. Empaths didn't just hear words, they felt atmospheres. They weren't responding to what people said. They were responding to what people carried. Jung broke down the aura's process into 3 stages, each more extraordinary than the last. The first stage is what he called the energetic scan. The empathic aura automatically tunes into what he described as feeling-toned complexes, the unconscious emotional patterns driving behavior. This happens instantly and unconsciously. You sense grief behind the smile, fear hidden in anger, insecurity behind arrogance. You don't need details. You feel the frequency. It's as though your aura highlights the truth others are trying to conceal. The second stage is unconscious absorption. Because your psyche was shaped to be permeable in childhood, you begin absorbing these emotions without choice. Jung described this as participation mystique, an unconscious merging with the psychological states of others. You don't just notice sadness, you carry it. You don't just observe fear, you feel it vibrating in your chest. This is why so many empaths feel drained after social interactions. Their aura functions like a sponge, soaking up emotional residue from everyone around them. The third stage is where Jung's insight becomes revolutionary, the alchemical process. Unlike most people, empaths don't just absorb raw emotional material, they unconsciously process it. Jung called this the transcendent function. Your nervous system takes in shadow material and begins transforming it, metabolizing pain into wisdom, fear into compassion, chaos into coherence. This is why people often feel calmer, lighter, or more whole after being around you, even if you never said or did anything obvious. Your aura has literally performed alchemy, transmuting the unprocessed emotions they couldn't face and reflecting back something more integrated. But here's the danger. This process only works when you are conscious of it. When you understand what's happening, you can set boundaries, regulate your energy, and choose how to engage. But when you're unaware, the alchemy collapses into simple absorption. Instead of transmuting energy, you drown in it. Instead of being a healer, you become an emotional sponge. Jung warned that unconscious empaths risk being consumed from within, not by their own wounds, but by the constant intake of everyone else's. This is why empaths often report physical symptoms that doctors can't explain. Chronic fatigue, headaches, stomach issues, sudden mood swings. These are not random. They are the body's response to carrying emotional weight that doesn't belong to it. Your aura isn't malfunctioning. It's overworked. It was designed to transmute, not to hoard. And when it becomes clogged with unprocessed residue, it turns against its carrier. But when used consciously, the empathic aura is nothing short of extraordinary. Jung described it as psychological radar, a system that doesn't just receive energy but transmits it. When you enter a room with awareness, your presence becomes catalytic. People feel seen without you saying a word. They feel lighter without knowing why. You become a mirror reflecting back their hidden truths, a filter purifying emotional chaos into clarity. This is why people are inexplicably drawn to empaths. They feel the alchemy happening in real time, even if they can't explain it. The flip side, however, is just as powerful. Your aura doesn't discriminate. It attracts both light and shadow. Those seeking healing will find resonance in you, but so will those who are unwilling to do their own work, who sense unconsciously that your field will process their pain for them. These are the energy vampires Jung warned about, the individuals who feed on your frequency because they've never developed one of their own. And unless you know how your aura operates, you won't know how to protect it. This is why awareness is non-negotiable. The empath who remains unconscious is doomed to cycles of exhaustion, confusion, and exploitation. But the empath who becomes conscious transforms their aura from a leaking sponge into a radiant field. Instead of absorbing everything indiscriminately, they choose what to engage with. Instead of being drained, they become centered. Instead of being consumed, they become sovereign. Jung believed this shift was the very definition of psychological mastery, the ability to wield one's unconscious gifts consciously. So ask yourself, when you walk into a room, do you leave heavier or lighter? Do people around you rise into more authentic versions of themselves, or do they pull you down into their unresolved chaos? These questions reveal whether your aura is operating unconsciously or consciously, and they point toward the next challenge. Jung identified, understanding why your aura doesn't just attract emotions, it attracts archetypes. Entire patterns of human psychology are drawn to you like moths to flame. Some will heal in your presence, others will attempt to consume you, and learning to distinguish between the two is the next step in your journey. Carl Jung believed that empaths do more than attract people, they attract archetypes. In his view, archetypes are universal patterns of human behavior embedded in the collective unconscious. They are ancient roles, recurring characters in the human story, living within each of us. And when your empathic aura radiates into the world, it doesn't just pull individuals, it magnetizes these archetypal forces. This is why empaths so often find themselves surrounded by extremes, the deeply wounded and the deeply awakened, the seekers and the predators. It isn't coincidence, it's resonance. Jung called this phenomenon archetypal attraction patterns. The empath's aura acts like a signal, broadcasting frequencies that call forth specific characters from the collective unconscious. Some are drawn to you for healing. Others are drawn to feed. And unless you learn to discern between them, you will live in constant cycles of confusion, unable to understand why your relationships feel like a battlefield of opposites. Let's start with the shadow side, the archetypes that drain you. The first is the wounded child. These are individuals carrying deep, unhealed trauma from early life. They sense your capacity to witness pain without judgment, something they never received growing up. To them, your aura feels like unconditional acceptance. And while your presence can be profoundly healing, the danger lies in their unconscious dependency. They may cling to you, expecting you to carry their wounds indefinitely, never stepping into their own power. Without boundaries, you can become their permanent caretaker, draining your energy while their healing stagnates. The second is the shadow projector. These are people who have disowned parts of themselves, rage, envy, insecurity, and unconsciously look for someone else to carry those emotions. Your aura, permeable and receptive, becomes their chosen container. They unload what they cannot face within themselves, leaving you feeling emotions that aren't yours. You may walk away from interactions with them feeling angry, anxious, or ashamed for no clear reason. That's because you've absorbed what they projected onto you. To them, you are a mirror they cannot stand, so they try to cover it with their shadow. The third is the most dangerous, the energy vampire. Jung described these people as psychological parasites. Their own empathic development was stunted, leaving them incapable of generating authentic emotional energy. Instead, they survive by feeding on others. They seek out empaths because your aura radiates exactly what they lack. They thrive on your attention, your compassion, your willingness to hold space. But instead of rising with you, they siphon from you. They create crises, dramatize pain, or play the eternal victim, ensuring you stay entangled in their orbit. Over time, they drain not just your energy, but your sense of self. But Jung also noted that empaths attract light, not just shadow. The same aura that calls predators also calls seekers, allies, and authentic souls. These relationships remind you why your gift is sacred. The first of these is the conscious seeker. These are individuals actively doing their own inner work. They recognize your aura as a mirror for their growth, not as a crutch. They don't come to take. They come to resonate. Being around them feels mutual. Your presence awakens them and theirs awakens you. There is no weight, no heaviness, only expansion. These connections are marked by inspiration, shared insights, and mutual evolution. The second is the authentic self. These are people ready to embrace their full humanity. They sense in your aura permission to feel deeply, to shed shame, to stand in their truth. With them, you don't have to filter or shrink yourself. Your presence encourages their authenticity, and their authenticity feeds your own. Together, you create spaces of raw honesty where healing flows naturally. This is the paradox of the empathic aura. It attracts both the wounded and the awakened, the takers and the givers. And Jung warned about what he called archetypal confusion, the inability to distinguish who comes to heal and who comes to feed. Without clarity, empaths fall into cycles of rescuing those who only drain them while overlooking those who could nourish them. They mistake energy vampires for seekers, shadow projectors for authentic connections, and in doing so, they exhaust themselves. So how do you tell the difference? Jung believed it comes down to discernment. Watch how people respond to your boundaries. The wounded child may resist at first, but will eventually grow if they're ready. The shadow projector will attack or withdraw because they cannot face themselves. The energy vampire will escalate, creating new crises to keep you hooked. By contrast, the conscious seeker respects your boundaries as part of their own growth, and the authentic self thrives within them. Boundaries don't repel them, they strengthen the bond. Understanding these archetypes is life-changing for empaths. Suddenly, the chaos of your relationships makes sense. The extremes you've experienced are not accidents. They are patterns written into your aura. And the key to transforming your life is not shutting down your sensitivity, but learning to recognize which archetypes are approaching and why. When you can discern, you no longer feel victimized by your gift, you become its master. Here's the truth. Jung wanted empaths to see your aura will always attract that cannot be turned off. The question is whether you will attract unconsciously, repeating cycles of exhaustion, or consciously, drawing in allies who resonate with your sovereignty. Your aura is like a magnet. It will pull regardless. But when you understand archetypal attraction patterns, you can shift the polarity. You stop being food for the vampires and start becoming a beacon for the seekers. And this brings us to Jung's next great insight. The aura doesn't just attract archetypes, it reflects them. It acts as a mirror, showing people not only who they are, but who they refuse to be. This is why your presence provokes such extreme reactions. Love, hate, admiration, hostility. You are not just a magnet, you are a mirror. And in the next section, we'll uncover how this mirror effect explains why some people find peace in your presence, while others try to tear you down. Carl Jung believed that the empathic aura doesn't just attract, it reflects. This is the hidden dynamic that explains why empaths evoke such powerful polarized reactions from people. To stand in the presence of an empath is to stand in front of a living mirror. Your aura doesn't simply receive energy. It bounces it back. It shows people what they are carrying, whether they want to see it or not. And this mirror effect is both the source of your greatest gift and the reason you often experience hostility, misunderstanding, or even attacks from others. Let's break this down. When someone with unresolved trauma, insecurity, or shame encounters your aura, they don't just see you, they see themselves. More specifically, they see the parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding, the parts they've hidden, repressed, or denied. Your presence, without effort, activates what Jung called shadow projection anxiety. They suddenly feel confronted by aspects of themselves they don't want to acknowledge. And because they can't separate their discomfort from your presence, they may lash out at you, criticize you, or try to make you the problem. This is why empaths often hear phrases like, "You're too sensitive," or "You're overreacting." These are not neutral statements. They are defense mechanisms. The other person is uncomfortable, not because of who you are, but because of what your aura is reflecting back to them. To them, your sensitivity feels like an accusation. Your authenticity feels like exposure. Your light feels like a spotlight on their darkness. And instead of taking responsibility, they attempt to dim you so they can remain in denial. But here's the paradox. The same mirror effect that triggers some people can also heal others. When someone is on the path of growth, when they are willing to face their shadows and step into authenticity, your aura becomes a catalyst. They feel recognized in a way they rarely do. They feel safe to drop their masks. This is what Jung called recognition resonance, the joy of being truly seen. They may say things like, "I feel so calm around you," or "You make me feel like I can finally be myself." These people aren't just complimenting you. They are experiencing their own wholeness reflected through your field. And then there's the third kind of response, predatory. When energy vampires encounter your aura, they see not just a mirror, but an opportunity. They recognize, often unconsciously, that your nervous system is capable of processing emotional material they cannot handle. Instead of feeling triggered like the unconscious do, or inspired like the seekers, they feel strategic. They think, "Here is someone who can carry my weight for me." These are the people who trauma dump without pause, who create endless crises that require your intervention, who position themselves as victims in need of rescue. They aren't seeking reflection, they're seeking regulation, and if you're not careful, they will make you their emotional regulator indefinitely. Jung saw this as one of the central dangers of the empathic life. Without conscious awareness, your aura makes you a target for projection, idealization, and exploitation. You may notice extremes. Some people are inexplicably drawn to you, while others seem to dislike you without reason. This isn't about you personally. It's about the mirror effect. People aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to what your aura shows them about themselves. So how do you navigate this? The key is discernment. When someone responds to you with hostility or criticism, recognize that it may not be about you at all. They may be running from their own reflection. When someone clings to you, unloading endless negativity, recognize that they may be trying to outsource their emotional labor to you. And when someone feels safe, seen, or inspired in your presence, cherish that. That's the sign of a relationship rooted in growth and mutual resonance. The challenge for empaths is that all three responses, hostile, predatory, and inspired, can feel overwhelming. It can leave you confused, wondering why you evoke such strong emotions in others. But once you understand the mirror effect, everything makes sense. You stop taking it personally. You realize that your aura is not just a passive glow, it's an active reflection, and people's reactions are not about your worth. They are about their readiness to face themselves. This is why boundaries are not optional for empaths. They are essential. When you set boundaries, you are not rejecting people. You are refusing to be distorted by their projections. You are making it clear what you see in me is your reflection, not my responsibility. This is the line that transforms an empath from a wounded healer into a sovereign healer. You stop absorbing other people's shadows and instead allow your mirror to serve its true purpose, showing others the truth of who they are, without losing yourself in the process. But Jung went even further. He believed that the mirror effect doesn't stop at the personal level. Empaths don't just reflect individuals, they reflect collectives. Their aura mirrors not only the unresolved emotions of people around them, but also the unprocessed wounds of entire groups, communities, even humanity itself. This is why empaths often feel the weight of world events so personally. They aren't imagining it. They're mirroring the collective unconscious. And that brings us to Jung's next profound discovery, the empath's connection to collective energy fields, and why their aura serves as a tuning fork for humanity's deepest shadows. Carl Jung believed the empath's aura does not stop at personal relationships. It stretches further into the invisible field of humanity itself. He called this realm the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes, emotions, and patterns that every human being participates in. And empaths, he observed, are like antennas tuned into this vast psychic ocean. You don't just feel individuals, you feel collectives. You don't just sense one person's sadness, you sense the grief of an entire group, an entire culture, sometimes even the world itself. This explains an experience many empaths share, but rarely understand: feeling devastated by global tragedies you've never personally touched, or carrying anxiety during times of collective upheaval without any direct cause in your own life. Maybe you've woken up heavy-hearted during a disaster halfway across the world. Maybe you've felt restless and drained when your community, your country, or even humanity itself seemed on edge. That's not coincidence. That's your empathic aura tuning into the collective field. Jung saw this as both gift and danger. The gift is that empaths serve as early warning systems for collective shadow eruptions. You often sense turbulence before it manifests physically. Wars, social unrest, environmental crises. Empaths feel the tremors in the collective psyche before the earthquake arrives. This makes you uniquely positioned to help humanity navigate change. But the danger is just as great. Without awareness, you can drown in waves that aren't yours. You can mistake collective pain for personal failure, carrying the suffering of millions, as though it were your private burden. Modern research has given Jung's intuition new credibility. Studies on mirror neurons and sensitivity show that empaths process more deeply not only interpersonal signals, but also environmental cues. Neuroscience suggests that empaths are wired to absorb not just what's near, but what's ambient. In Jung's language, this means your aura doesn't stop at the edges of your skin. It connects with archetypal fields, frequencies woven through the collective unconscious. You are literally participating in the emotional life of humanity. But what exactly are you picking up? Jung said empaths tune into archetypal energies, the great universal themes that drive human behavior. You may feel the despair of the wounded child archetype rising in societies struggling with injustice. You may feel the aggression of the warrior archetype surging during times of war. You may feel the fear of the orphan archetype echoing during economic collapse. These aren't abstract concepts. They are felt realities that course through your body, as if they were your own emotions. And unless you learn to distinguish them, they can overwhelm you. This is where Jung warned of something he called psychic inflation. When empaths mistake collective emotions for personal ones, they take on responsibilities that no single human can carry. They believe it is their job to heal the world's pain. They sacrifice their energy, their health, even their identity, trying to hold back tides that were never meant for one person alone. This is why so many empaths burn out, collapsing under the weight of global suffering. They confuse participation with obligation. They forget that sensing the world's pain is not the same as being tasked to fix it. Yet, Jung also believed that empaths play a critical role in the evolution of consciousness. By tuning into the collective shadow, you bring awareness where others remain numb. You model what it looks like to feel deeply while staying grounded. In doing so, you help humanity itself move toward greater wholeness. He called this the process of collective individuation, the slow awakening of the species to its own unconscious. Empaths are the bridges in this process, linking personal healing to collective transformation. But to play this role without being destroyed, you must develop discernment. You must ask, is this pain mine, or is it ours? You must learn to separate personal emotion from collective energy. One simple practice is to pause when you feel overwhelmed and ask, did something in my personal life trigger this feeling? Or could I be sensing the collective field? That small act of awareness can prevent psychic inflation. It can remind you that not every storm you feel belongs to you. Some storms are simply passing through. Here's the empowering truth. When you distinguish personal from collective, you unlock your real gift. You stop being a sponge for the world's pain and start being a transmuter of it. You learn to channel collective energy through creativity, service, and consciousness rather than letting it consume you. This is why so many empaths find relief in art, activism, or spirituality. These are ways of processing the collective without collapsing under it. Jung believed this is how the wounded healer becomes the sovereign healer, not by shutting out the world, but by engaging with it consciously. Think of your aura as both mirror and antenna. It reflects individuals back to themselves, yes, but it also tunes into humanity's frequency, allowing you to feel currents most people don't even notice. That's not weakness. That's advanced perception. It's an evolutionary edge, but only if you wield it with awareness. Otherwise, it will feel like a curse, pulling you into despair that isn't even yours. This is why Jung insisted that empaths must practice what he called psychological hygiene. Just as you wash your body daily, you must cleanse your aura regularly. Meditation, time in nature, creative expression, prayer, these are not luxuries for empaths. They are necessities. They help you release collective residue, returning you to your center. Without them, the weight of the collective will bury you. With them, you stand as a sovereign empath, able to sense the world's pain without being destroyed by it. And this brings us to the next step in the journey: transformation. Jung didn't just diagnose the empath's challenges. He outlined a method, a way to evolve from wounded sponge to sovereign alchemist. He left behind a framework for how to acknowledge, understand, reclaim, and activate your empathic gifts. In the next section, we'll explore what I call the OARA method, a roadmap to transform your rare sensitivity from vulnerability into power. Carl Jung didn't just study empaths as a curiosity. He left behind clues for how they could transform their sensitivity into sovereignty. While he never used the word method himself, his writings and private notes reveal a framework that can be distilled into 4 steps. I call it the AURA method, because it teaches empaths how to work consciously with their aura instead of being ruled by it. The 4 letters: acknowledge, understand, reclaim, activate, map the journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer. The first step is the most important, and also the one most empaths avoid acknowledgement. Jung emphasized that you cannot integrate what you do not recognize. For many empaths, sensitivity feels like a weakness or an inconvenience. You might downplay it, apologize for it, or hide it because the world tells you you're too much. But denial only keeps you trapped in unconscious patterns. Jung urged his patients to face the truth of their gifts, however uncomfortable. Acknowledgement means admitting, I don't just feel emotions, I absorb them. I process them. My body and aura are wired differently. This isn't arrogance, it's honesty. When you stop pretending your empathy is normal, you can start working with it consciously. Track your energy levels during the day. Notice how different people, places, or activities affect you. Jung called this energy accounting, keeping track of where your psychic resources flow. Just like money, your energy is a currency, and if you don't account for it, others will spend it for you. The second step is understanding. Jung believed that every person is influenced by archetypes, universal roles like the caretaker, the hero, the victim. For empaths, certain archetypes are especially dominant, particularly what he called the wounded healer constellation. This archetype convinces you that your worth depends on helping, rescuing, or fixing others. It whispers, if you're not healing someone, you're failing. Left unchecked, it traps empaths in endless cycles of sacrifice. Understanding means shining light on these unconscious roles. Do I feel guilty when I step not helping someone? Do I attract people who always need fixing? Do I feel responsible for others' emotions, even when I didn't cause them? If the answer is yes, then archetypal patterns are driving your empathy unconsciously. Jung's tool for shifting this was active imagination, dialoguing with these inner figures. Imagine sitting across from your inner caretaker or your inner rescuer. Ask them, why are you here? What do you want from me? How can I transform your role so it serves me rather than drains me? By bringing these archetypes into awareness, you free yourself from being ruled by them. The third step is reclamation. Jung understood that boundaries are not walls, they are membranes. They don't shut life out, they filter what comes in. Empaths often struggle with boundaries because they confuse them with rejection. But boundaries aren't rejection, they are recognition. They recognize where you end and another person begins. Reclaiming your boundaries means learning to sense when your aura is being invaded or drained. Do you suddenly feel exhausted after a conversation? Do you notice emotions rising that don't feel like your own? These are signs your boundaries have been crossed. Jung recommended practices of psychological hygiene, daily rituals to cleanse your field and restore your center. This might mean meditation, journaling, time in nature, prayer, or creative expression. What matters is not the form but the function, reminding yourself who you are beneath everything you've absorbed. Reclaiming also means saying no, energetically and verbally. Not every crisis is yours to solve. Not every wound is yours to heal. When you draw boundaries, you teach your aura to stop leaking energy indiscriminately. You shift from being a sponge to being a sovereign. And this change alone will repel many energy vampires who can no longer feed on you. The final step is activation. Jung believed that true mastery comes not from rejecting sensitivity, but from wielding it consciously. He called this conscious empathy, the ability to feel with others without losing yourself in them. This is empathy as choice, not compulsion. It is the difference between drowning in someone's pain and holding space for their healing. Conscious empathy means you decide when, where, and how to engage your gifts. You can witness suffering without absorbing it. You can offer compassion without depletion. You can reflect truth without becoming entangled in someone else's shadow. Jung called this ability the transcendent function, the capacity to hold opposites at once. You can be open and protected, compassionate and firm, sensitive and strong. Activating conscious empathy often feels like a shift in posture. Instead of leaning forward into everyone's emotions, you lean back into your own center. Instead of carrying others' energy, you allow it to move through you without sticking. And the more you practice, the more your aura radiates not woundedness, but wholeness. This is when you transform from wounded healer to sovereign healer. Your aura no longer broadcasts, "I will carry you." It radiates, "I will reflect you so you can carry yourself." The Aura method is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice, but each step strengthens the next. Acknowledging your energy frees you from denial. Understanding your archetypes frees you from unconscious roles. Reclaiming your boundaries frees you from exploitation. And activating conscious empathy frees you to shine without being consumed. Together, these steps transform your aura from porous and draining to radiant and sovereign. And here's the most extraordinary part. When you make this shift, the attraction patterns around you change. Energy vampires no longer find a way in. Shadow projectors lose their grip. Instead, seekers, authentic souls, and individuated allies appear. Your aura begins to broadcast a different frequency, one that calls in not dependency but resonance. And that sets the stage for the next transformation. The journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer, a path Jung believed was the highest calling of the empath. Carl Jung often spoke of the wounded healer archetype, the idea that those who have suffered the deepest wounds are uniquely positioned to heal others. But he also warned that staying in this role indefinitely is dangerous. The wounded healer can become trapped, endlessly giving, endlessly sacrificing, until nothing remains. Jung believed this archetype was not the destination, but the doorway. The true goal was transformation, evolving into what he described as the sovereign healer. The difference between the two is profound. The wounded healer radiates empathy born of suffering, but their aura leaks energy. They give without limit, often at the cost of their own well-being. Their relationships are full of imbalance. Others take, and they absorb, they shine, but their light flickers because it burns fuel that is never replenished. They may feel noble, even purposeful, but deep down they carry exhaustion, resentment, and a quiet sense of depletion. The sovereign healer, by contrast, still carries all the sensitivity, all the perception, all the depth, but now anchored in wholeness. Their aura no longer leaks, it radiates. They don't give from a place of compulsion, they give from choice. They don't collapse under the weight of others' shadows. They hold those shadows up like a mirror, reflecting them back until the other person can face themselves. The sovereign healer does not lose themselves in the process of healing others. They stand in their center, fully intact. Jung described this shift as an energetic alchemy. The same wounds that once made you vulnerable become the very source of your strength. But the transformation requires conscious integration. It requires what Jung called conscious suffering, the willingness to fully feel and process your own pain instead of numbing it or projecting it outward. When you do this, your wounds no longer bleed unconsciously into your aura. Instead, they crystallize into wisdom. They become part of your wholeness. Imagine your aura as a vessel. In the wounded healer stage, that vessel is cracked. Your energy leaks out while other people's energy seeps in. You may help others, but at tremendous personal cost. In the sovereign healer stage, the cracks are no longer wounds. They are seams of gold, like the Japanese art of kintsugi. Your vessel doesn't just hold, it radiates. The very places that once broke you become the most luminous parts of you. And when others encounter you, they don't just feel comfort, they feel possibility. They feel that their own wounds might one day become wisdom too. This is why Jung said the sovereign healer inspires healing without effort. You don't have to overextend, overgive, or overexplain. Your presence does the work. Your aura becomes what Jung called a healing field, a resonance that activates growth in others simply by existing. People leave your presence lighter not because you carried their pain for them, but because your wholeness reminded them of their own. The wounded healer often attracts energy vampires and shadow projectors because their aura broadcasts availability for draining. But the sovereign healer attracts something entirely different. Jung noted that sovereign empaths begin drawing what he called individuated souls, people who have done their own inner work, who come not to take but to co-create. These relationships are mutually nourishing. They are partnerships of resonance where both people rise together. The difference is unmistakable. In the wounded healer stage, you walk away from interactions exhausted. In the sovereign healer stage, you walk away energized. In the wounded stage, you feel responsible for everyone's emotions. In the sovereign stage, you feel compassionate without being consumed. In the wounded stage, your aura reflects others' shadows but absorbs them too. In the sovereign stage, your aura reflects shadows clearly, while staying untangled in their weight. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires courage. It requires setting boundaries that may anger people who were used to feeding on you. It requires letting go of savior complexes, the unconscious belief that you must heal everyone you meet. And perhaps most challenging, it requires choosing to face your own pain fully, so you can transmute it instead of leaking it. Jung called this integration of the shadow. Until you embrace the parts of yourself you once denied, you cannot become whole. But once you make this shift, everything changes. The aura of the sovereign healer feels different. It is radiant but contained, strong but gentle, open but grounded. People sense it immediately. Those who are unconscious may still feel triggered, but they can no longer manipulate or drain you. Those who are conscious feel inspired, uplifted, and strengthened. And those who are individuated feel resonance, a deep sense of recognition that you are standing on the same path. Think about it this way. The wounded healer frequency whispers, "I'll carry your pain for you." The sovereign healer frequency declares, "I'll show you that you can carry your own." One creates dependence. The other creates empowerment. And this shift is not only personal, it is collective. Every empath who rises into sovereignty clears the path for others. Every sovereign healer becomes a living example that sensitivity is not weakness, but strength, not curse, but gift. This is why Jung considered the sovereign healer one of the most advanced expressions of individuation. To become sovereign is to embody wholeness. It is to live as proof that wounds can become wisdom, that brokenness can become beauty, that empathy can become power. It is to stand in your truth unapologetically, radiating authenticity in a world that often fears it. And here is where the ripple expands. Sovereign healers don't just transform themselves. They transform families, communities, even entire cultures. Their presence creates shifts that go far beyond personal relationships. And this leads us directly into Jung's next revelation. Empaths are not only individual healers, they are collective healers, playing a vital role in humanity's evolution toward greater consciousness. Carl Jung believed empaths don't exist just for themselves. Their role extends far beyond personal relationships. He saw them as crucial agents in what he called collective individuation, humanity's slow and painful journey toward greater consciousness. Empaths, in his view, are not accidents of nature. They are instruments of evolution. Their rare aura allows them to tune into the hidden wounds of the collective, and in doing so, they help bring unconscious material into the light. Think about it this way. Most people live cut off from their deepest emotions. They numb themselves with distractions, with noise, with busyness. They bury their pain so deeply that even when it shapes their actions, they remain unaware of it. But empaths cannot escape feeling. They absorb what others deny. They sense what others suppress, and in doing so, they act as consciousness bridges. They connect people back to their emotional truth, not by lecturing, but simply by existing as mirrors of authenticity. This is why empaths often become the emotional centers of families or communities. Without trying, they pick up on dynamics others ignore. They sense the unspoken tensions, the generational wounds, the hidden grief running beneath the surface. When they voice what they feel, even gently, others sometimes react with shock because the empath has put words to what no one else dared to acknowledge. Jung believed this wasn't just interpersonal skill, it was archetypal work. Empaths bring shadow into awareness, and every time shadow becomes conscious, healing begins, not just for one person, but for the group as a whole. The ripple effect is profound. Jung observed that when a single person in a family system integrates their shadow and steps into sovereignty, the entire system begins to shift. The unspoken secrets lose their grip. The cycles of dysfunction weaken. Others in the family begin to face truths they had avoided. He called this process constellation activation. When one light in a system awakens, it has the power to ignite others. And empaths by nature are often the ones carrying that first spark. But the role of empaths isn't only limited to families. On a cultural scale, they serve as early detectors of collective crisis. Many empaths report feeling inexplicably anxious or heavy in the days leading up to global tragedies, natural disasters, or societal upheavals. They tune into the archetypal fields of humanity, sensing tension before it erupts. Jung believed this wasn't mystical, it was evolutionary. Empaths are like canaries in the coal mine of consciousness, alerting humanity to what it refuses to face. Yet, there's a danger in this role. Empaths often confuse sensing collective pain with being responsible for healing it. This is where many fall into what Jung warned against: the savior complex. This archetypal trap convinces empaths that they must carry everyone's suffering, that they alone are responsible for fixing the world. But the truth is, the savior complex creates dependence, not transformation. It weakens others instead of empowering them. Jung insisted that the true role of the empath is not to heal everyone, but to model conscious feeling. What does that mean? Conscious feeling is the ability to experience emotions fully without being consumed by them. It is the act of standing in the storm of grief, anger, or fear, and staying grounded. When others witness this in an empath, they realize it is possible for them too. This is how collective healing begins, not with one person taking on everyone's pain, but with one person modeling that pain can be felt consciously, integrated, and transformed. The empath doesn't heal others by absorbing their wounds. They heal others by demonstrating wholeness. This modeling creates what Jung described as consciousness ripples. When someone encounters a sovereign empath, they are subtly encouraged to stop numbing, to stop projecting, to stop hiding. They begin to sense that there is another way to live, authentically, openly, courageously. And once one person in a group makes this shift, it spreads. It gives permission for others to follow. This is why the presence of just one sovereign empath can alter the dynamic of an entire workplace, community, or even movement. From Jung's perspective, empaths are part of an evolutionary development. Humanity is moving toward greater collective consciousness, and empaths are the pioneers of this path. They are wired to process emotions at depths most people cannot. This may feel like a burden at times, but it is also a glimpse of where the species is headed. Empaths are not behind. They are ahead. Their sensitivity is not weakness. It is an evolutionary edge, preparing humanity for a stage of development where feeling and integrating the collective shadow will be essential for survival. But to fulfill this role, empaths must rise from woundedness into sovereignty. Otherwise, they drown in the very collective material they are meant to illuminate. They collapse under the weight of the world's pain instead of transmuting it. Jung saw this danger clearly, which is why he insisted that individuation, the process of becoming whole, was not optional for empaths. It was necessary, not just for their survival, but for humanity's evolution. So here is the truth. Your aura is not just personal, it is collective. Every time you integrate your own shadow, you contribute to collective healing. Every time you set boundaries, you model sovereignty for others. Every time you embrace your authenticity, you give permission for others to embrace theirs. This is your role, not to fix the world, but to embody wholeness so fully that the world remembers its own. And this leads us to Jung's final insight, the culmination of his hidden research, the ultimate purpose of the empathic aura. Beyond survival, beyond healing, beyond even collective individuation, lies the deepest truth of all, that your aura is not a burden but a gift, not a curse to endure, but a blessing to wield. In the conclusion, we'll uncover Jung's ultimate message for empaths, how to step fully into authenticity, and why sovereignty is the key to transforming your aura into the radiant gift it was always meant to be. Carl Jung's most profound revelation about the empathic aura was this: it is not meant to be a burden you drag through life. It is a gift, but only if you learn to wield it with awareness. Left unconscious, it will drain you, attract predators, and bury you under the weight of everyone else's pain. But made conscious, it becomes one of the rarest blessings a human being can carry, a living mirror of authenticity, a bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, a radiant field of possibility. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For empaths, this means moving beyond woundedness into sovereignty. It means realizing that your aura does not exist to make you endlessly responsible for others. It exists to reflect wholeness, to awaken authenticity, and to serve as a beacon for those ready to rise. The journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer is not just personal, it is archetypal. Every empath who makes this shift carries humanity one step closer to collective integration. The truth is simple. Though rarely spoken, you were not born empathic as a random accident. You became empathic because your nervous system adapted to survive. What began as hypervigilance turned into perception. What began as pain became presence. What began as brokenness was refined into beauty. Your aura is the living proof of traumatic alchemy, the process of turning suffering into sacred power. This is why people sense something rare when you enter a room. It isn't just kindness, it's transformation embodied. But Jung wanted empaths to understand something crucial. Sovereignty doesn't mean closing off. It doesn't mean hardening your heart or building walls so high that no one can reach you. True sovereignty is containment without contraction. It is the ability to radiate fully without leaking, to feel deeply without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to hold the mirror up to others without letting their projections define you. Sovereignty is not withdrawal. It is mastery. And here is the paradox: when you stop apologizing for your depth, when you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable, when you stop carrying pain that was never yours to carry, your aura doesn't become smaller, it becomes brighter. People still feel it, but the quality changes. Instead of attracting vampires, you attract seekers. Instead of being a magnet for shadow, you become a magnet for wholeness. Your presence no longer says, "I will absorb you." It says, "I will awaken you." This is why Jung believed that sovereign empaths represent the future of human consciousness. In a world increasingly disconnected, numb and fragmented, empaths remind humanity of its capacity to feel, to integrate, to heal. You are not here to save everyone. You are here to embody what it looks like to live authentically, to model conscious feeling in a world terrified of emotion, to stand as proof that wounds can be transmuted into wisdom, that sensitivity can be strength, that empathy can be power. The ripple effect is extraordinary. One sovereign empath in a family can break generational cycles. One sovereign empath in a workplace can shift the culture of an entire team. One sovereign empath in a community can spark a movement. Jung called this the power of consciousness ripples, the subtle but undeniable waves that spread outward when one person embodies authenticity. Your wholeness doesn't just serve you, it serves everyone around you. But perhaps Jung's ultimate message is this: the empath's journey is not about fixing others, it's about becoming whole yourself. When you become whole, your aura naturally reflects wholeness. Others will see it, feel it, and be inspired to integrate their own shadows. You don't have to force this. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for it. You simply have to live it. And in living it, you fulfill the deeper purpose of your gift. So if you've ever wondered why you feel different, why people react to you so intensely, why you carry emotions that don't make sense, know this: it's because you are carrying something rare, an aura forged in fire, refined through pain, and capable of radiating healing far beyond yourself. It is not weakness. It is not curse. It is the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, between shadow and light. And now, the choice is yours. Will you remain the wounded healer, endlessly absorbing, endlessly rescuing, endlessly drained? Or will you step into sovereignty, radiating wholeness, inspiring healing, and living as proof of transformation? Jung believed that the answer to this question shapes not only your life, but the collective future of humanity. So declare it: my sensitivity is my superpower. My aura is my sovereignty. My wounds are my wisdom. Let these words anchor you, because once you embrace the truth of who you are, you will no longer fear your aura. You will wield it. You will embody it. And in doing so, you will become what Jung described as the rarest of all healers, not the one who saves others at their own expense, but the one who heals by standing whole. Your journey from wounded to sovereign is not the end. It is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live.